Catherine Merridale's Yvonne's War is a fairly standard history of the Red Army during the Second World War. Unlike Russian histories of the Second World War, Catherine Merridale uses the Western dates as her point of reference. That is to say, she starts her history when Russia and Germany divide Poland, and she does not start her history on Operation Barbarossa, as many Russians do. And from 1939 onward, she, as a Westerner like myself, provides an overlook of the Red Army's life, objectives, struggles, scandals, and achievements. Perhaps where the book shines most prominently is in how it describes the culture and daily affairs of the average Soviet soldier. In this book, we learn that they had problems with their uniforms. We learn that they had daily drills to improve their dress reaction time, plenty of undiagnosed mental health issues such as trauma, and plenty of affairs at alarmingly high rates. None of this is to mention crimes such as rape or the massacre in Katyn. Rules were apparently broken throughout the Red Army. Looting was a common practice. Soldiers were expected to be chased, but rarely were, and they would often steal belongings such as food, potatoes from locals. They would write songs that were critical of their political administration, and they would tell jokes that were too crass to be repeated. In fact, they weren't repeated and they were lost to time, many of these jokes. Much of this is lost, and Dr. Merridale is unable to provide us with many examples, but the fact that this occurred by the soldiers' own testimony is an enlightening fact, since censorship was rather rampant and you could get in trouble for doing such a thing. Yet, all the same, crass jokes, irreverent humor, making fun of authority and the Soviet propaganda, as well as traditional moral values, this kind of humor is very common on the front lines. Other things that were also not reported, though, is the amount of deaths in Stalin's first Soviet army. Supposedly the army that existed at the start of the war had to be entirely replaced by the end of the war. This is because the Soviets lost that same amount of troops. At the time, this was not reported, since there was a fear that this would cause riots. Since anything that would cause soldiers to lose morale was generally censored. Much like today, Russian media outlets were not always honest and forthcoming regarding their losses. As for who was complicit and who was a rebel in the system, Dr. Merridale gives a good picture where enlists were often rather mixed, with some coming from anti-communist backgrounds, such as religious or Ukrainian backgrounds, while the officers consistently were expected to uphold Soviet ideals and to promote Soviet propaganda when possible. While ideological dissent existed amongst the Soviets, the cult of Stalin was assuredly prevalent in the Soviet army. As much of the fighting was in Ukraine, Dr. Merridale describes sites that are local to Ukraine. This, of course, includes the Battle of Kiev, and she also includes some brief information about the Ukrainian insurgent army. Like all English-speaking historians, she does not cover this topic with enough detail to adequately explain why contemporary Ukrainians continue to idolize the Ukrainian insurgent army, but she does discuss it. More importantly, however, she explains how Soviet projects to memorialize the Red Army were received negatively by Ukrainians. This includes Soviet war museums that were built in Ukraine, but were neglected after the fall of the Soviet Union. This is particularly true given that Ukrainians lost more civilians in the Second World War than Russians did, and that at the time of Dr. Merridale's writing this, Ukraine had just undergone the 2004 Orange Revolution, not to be confused with the 2013-14 Maidan Revolution. As for Crimea, it was considered Russia during the Second War, but she includes its significance as a landmark for Hitler's military objective, and she also addresses the unfortunate deportation of Crimean Tatars. Much of what Dr. Merridale describes is battles, strategic aims, and demarcations of the Soviet army. We learn what the order of events were leading up to the closing of the Second World War, and as a World War II history book, Dr. Merridale provides the technical details one would expect. Overall, I enjoyed this book. If you're interested in World War II history, I would recommend it. But if not, then to be honest, I would guess I would have a hard time imagining you enjoying this text. Not every book can be for everyone. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. If you found that I misrepresented anything Dr. Catherine Merridale wrote, please let me know in the comments. If you disagree with any conclusions I made, also let me know. I'm doing this for educational purpose, so exchanges are welcomed. If you like this video, feel free to click a thumbs up or to subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.